Well, welcome to this webinar. This is a co-produced event delivered by Buck's Send Information Advice and Support Service, which provides impartial and arm's length advice to parents and carers, and sponsored by Families and Carers Together in Bucks, the forum of parents and carers with children and young people with special educational needs or disabilities, working to ensure that the views of families are instrumental in shaping services. This is the 6th webinar we've created, and we'll be delivering more over the next year, aimed at increasing parent and carer knowledge and abilities to engage with the SEND system. This webinar will be recorded. The slides with clickable links to useful websites and the recording will be shared with you individually in due course. These will also be available on the FactBucks website and the SENDIAS web pages, details of which will appear at the end. You'll have noticed that you're automatically muted. Only the presenters will speak. Questions are encouraged. You'll be able to type in your questions at any time, and we'll try to answer as many as possible at the end of the session. Please keep questions as general as possible. Questions about individual children are best asked privately via the SENDIAS online contact form available on their web pages. Questions will be moderated before they appear, which may take a few moments. We will collect together all the questions and share the answers with you as soon as we can after the session. So if we run out of time today, your question will still be answered. A tip: if you're having any kind of connection difficulty as you join the session or during it, try logging out and starting again. If this doesn't clear up the problem, you'll be able to access the recorded version of the webinar in due course. Today's webinar was presented by 2 of the SENDIAS advisors, Jennifer Ogley and Natasha Doggett.
Thank you, Andrew. Hi, I'm Jennifer, one of the SENDIAS advisors. I will be presenting the first part of this webinar, and this is Natasha, who will be taking over later. This webinar is designed to give you a starting point if you are new to the world of special educational needs and/or disabilities. Just a note on the content of this webinar: where we mention parents, we mean parents and carers. Now, as Andrew mentioned, within this presentation, there are many useful links. Some of these are links to the Bucks SENDIAS web pages, which can provide you with a lot more information than we can present today. Some are links to other information and organisations which you may find helpful. If you think of this webinar as a reference book, you probably won't need all of this information, and certainly not all at once, but at least you'll know where to find it if you do. Now, I just want to start off with a brief introduction to Bucks SENDIAS service. Our service is here to help Buckinghamshire children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities aged 0 to 25 years and their parents or carers. We offer information, advice and support on all matters related to SEND. We are a small team of advisors supported by business support officers, and some of our team are volunteers. All advisors have been trained in SEND law to help you. We operate all year round, including in school holidays. Our service is free of charge, confidential, that is, we don't share your information with anyone else without your permission unless there is a safeguarding reason. Our service is impartial and neutral, so we don't take sides. And we are at arm's length from Buckinghamshire Council and Health Services. Now, our service is statutory, which means that each English local authority has to provide a service like ours. So if you move from Buckinghamshire, find the local SENDIAS service where you live. Scotland and Wales have different arrangements. And we work with you as parents and carers, but we are here just as much for your child. We can help them to understand their rights and to give their views, so we can work with them directly as well. In fact, once your child is over compulsory school age, so after they've finished year 11, we will usually need their consent for us to be involved. So we can work directly with them, or if they prefer, with you. If they have a significant learning disability and are unable to understand what our service is for, we will usually be able to work with you without their consent. Now, on this slide, I've included a link to a short video about our service, which you may like to watch with your child. We are funded by education, health and social care to meet minimum standards, and you can watch a short animation about this. This link is also on this slide. And as Andrew said, Natasha and I are 2 of the SENDIAS advisors, and we will be sharing our information with you. Okay, so coming back to our topic of new to SEND, where to begin? Okay, as someone who's new to this, you probably have lots of questions. We've organised this webinar into 5 different sections to help you on your journey. So we'll start at the top with what SEND means, then move around this flower to help you with answers to these questions. So where can I look for help for my child? Where can I look for help for my family? What should I do if I think my child has SEND? Sorry, I can't read it, but I'm not sure. And finally, how do I learn more about my child's needs and what support they need? Okay, so first we'll have a quick look at the definition of SEND, or special educational needs and disabilities. So what is meant by special educational needs? What does the law say? Special educational need is a legal term. It's a significant learning difficulty which requires special help, more than most children require. Or is it, sorry, or it is a disability which stops the child from using what is provided for mainstream children, or makes using this harder for them. Okay, this is defined in Section 20 of the Children and Families Act 2014. Now, just because a child has a learning difficulty or a disability, it does not mean that they automatically have special educational needs. However, if a child has a learning difficulty or disability that requires special educational help that is different to or additional to the help that most children get, then they are described as having special educational needs. It comes down to the help that they need. So what is learning difficulty? Learning difficulty is also a legal term. A child of compulsory school age has a learning difficulty if they have significantly greater difficulty in learning than the majority of the same age. And this again is from the Children and Families Act, Section 20. Just to note, a diagnosis is not required in order for a learning difficulty to be identified. Now, as we've said, a child may have special educational needs because they have a learning difficulty or a disability, which requires special educational help. So what's a disability? Again, it's a legal term. So you're disabled under the Equality Act 2010 if you have a physical or mental impairment that has a substantial and long-term negative effect on your ability to do normal daily activities. This definition of disability is taken from Section 6 of the Equality Act. And this is the legal definition of disability used in the SEND Code of Practice. And it's related to the impact that your needs have on your everyday life. One other legal point. Your views as parents and carers are very important and do count. Let's see how this is written in law. Now, we call the words in these blue boxes the Section 19 principles because they are from Section 19 of the Children and Families Act. Basically, the local authority and other organisations linked to it, such as schools and health teams, must make sure that children, young people and their parents and carers are listened to and are involved in decision making as fully as possible. It's important to stress that this is not optional for the local authority, it is a duty. Okay, coming back to our flower, now that we've looked at what SEND is, you might want to know where you can look for help for your child. We're going to look at this in 3 sections. So where can you look for help with education, health, and social aspects, including independence and community involvement. So starting first with education. Okay, here are some key things that you need to know about education. To begin with, the first step for supporting a child's needs at school is via universal support, which is available to all. This includes both high quality teaching and differentiation. The SEND Code of Practice states that high quality teaching, differentiated for individual pupils, is the first step in responding to pupils who have or may have SEN. Additional intervention and support cannot compensate for a lack of good quality teaching. So that's the starting point for a school. Now, if universal support is not enough to help a child move towards achieving their outcomes, then further cycles of support are planned, implemented, and reviewed. This is called the graduated approach. I won't go into the detail about that here. Sorry, just catch up. But you can find more information about the graduated approach in our SEN support webinar. There are links to this and to our other webinars at the end of this presentation. It is through the graduated approach that schools work out what your child's needs are and what will help them to make progress. And it is through the graduated approach that a need for special educational provision or help would be identified. Just a little note about our web pages and these links at the bottom of the slide. We've organised our web pages so you can find information relevant to the age of your child. So within each one of these age-specific links, you will find information across education, health, and so on. You can find the information you need by looking at the subheadings on these pages. For example, all three of them will have a subheading for a graduated approach. Okay, so what is special educational provision? Special educational provision or help is that which is additional to or different from that made generally for others of the same age by mainstream settings. It's important to note that a diagnosis is not needed for a child to receive support. For instance, a child may have significant difficulty focusing. This need can be identified and support provided without diagnosing the underlying reason for that need. Conversely, a diagnosis does not automatically mean that a child has SEN or needs special provision. Now, most children and young people with SEND make progress with the extra help that early years settings, schools and colleges can give from the resources they already have, and this is called SEN support. Sometimes, if a child needs more help than a setting can be expected to provide from their own resources, then an EHC plan may be necessary. If you need more information about SEN support and EHC needs assessments, you may find our recorded webinars useful. And just touching on the legal side of things here, the Children and Families Act says that schools must use its best endeavours to make sure that a child with SEN gets the support they need. They must ensure that children and young people with SEN engage in the activities of the school alongside pupils who do not have SEN. They must designate a teacher to be responsible for coordinating SEN provision, and they must inform parents when they are making special educational provision for a child. Just to note, this does not apply to schools, though, that are wholly independent. In terms, another important thing, in terms of admissions to any type of educational setting, and that includes nursery schools and further education colleges, it's worth knowing that the Equality Act 2010 applies. And this prohibits discrimination against disabled children and young people in decisions about admissions. And it means that your child cannot be refused admission because they don't have an EHC plan. Now, you may be wondering what kind of education you want for your child. Do you want mainstream or special education? Here are the definitions. So a special school is a school which is specially organised to make special educational provision for pupils with SEN. Whereas a mainstream school is a school which is not a special school and is either a maintained school or an academy. Mainstream schools are open to everyone. Children almost always need an EHC plan to be admitted to a special school. Now, you have a strong right to a mainstream education for your child, but not to a particular mainstream school. If you want your child to have a mainstream education, you should not be refused it on the basis that mainstream is unsuitable or that your child's needs or disabilities are too great or complex. So that was mainstream school versus special school. What about additionally resourced provision, or ARPS? These are specialist units within certain mainstream schools. and they offer intensive and flexible therapy and specialist teaching on site. ARP pupils are members of mainstream classes and are taught alongside their peers within the classroom by experienced teaching staff. At times, children may receive specialist small group teaching as part of their ARP provision. And just an example of an ARP is at Homer Green Senior School, which has an ARP specifically for speech, language and communication needs. So, if you're choosing a setting, school, college, nursery, what do you need to know? First, what preschools, schools and colleges are out there. You can use these links to find out more. You can use filters to narrow down your search, and there's a useful map on the Education and Learning link. Once you have a short list, you'll want to know more about them. So, what will they offer your child with SEND? The SEN Information Report is well worth looking at. It explains how the school caters for children with special educational needs. Maintained schools, nurseries and academies all have to have them, and you can find them on the school's website or on the Education and Learning link on this slide. It will also be important to check Ofsted reports, especially their ratings. Ofsted reports are inspection reports from government education inspectors, and each provider is given a rating of outstanding, good, requires improvement, or inadequate. You could also try to arrange a visit with the school that you're interested in and arrange to meet the SENCO to talk about whether the school would be the right fit for your child. Okay, once you've chosen school, or while making your decisions, the next question is, how does your child get a place? The process for getting a place depends on whether or not your child has an EHC plan. If your child does not have an EHC plan or is only partway through an EHC needs assessment, you'll need to use the mainstream process listed here. If your child has an EHC plan, even if you want a mainstream preschool, school or college for them, you will need to work with your Education, Health and Care Coordinator, sometimes called an ECHO, to get a place for your child. The law around getting a school place for children with an EHC plan is quite tricky. We'll be adding comprehensive information about it on our website shortly, so please check back soon. Okay, so where can you look for help with your child's education? Just sources of information, our web pages, the FACT and SENDIAS webinars. You could speak to teachers and school staff, the SENCO, or SEN coordinator, who is the teacher responsible for coordinating SEN provision. In further education, there should be a similar person to coordinate SEN provision as well. You could look on the Bucks local offer, which I will explain in more detail a bit later, and the ordinarily available provision documents, or OAP documents. There's one for early years and one for schools, and this is what mainstream early years settings and schools are expected to provide out of their own resources, as I mentioned above, under SEN support. So the OAP documents can give you some ideas about what mainstream settings should be able to provide. So, for example, if your child has difficulty saying what they want and being understood, an example of what the setting should do is provide an additional method of communicating. For example, use of ICT, symbol communication such as Makaton, PECs or symbols. Or if your child has difficulty in making and maintaining healthy relationships, the OAP documents suggest small group, nurture group activities to support personal, social and emotional development, or a range of differentiated opportunities for social and emotional development. For example, buddy systems, friendship strategies and circle time. So the OAP is for mainstream. To see what a special school provides, the best source of information is the school's SEN Information Report, as I mentioned on the previous slide. Just some other special educational help that might be available is Portage, which you can find on the Bucks Family Information Service, and more on that later, and the Early Years SEND team, and both of those are specifically for the early years, so that's up to age 5. And for schools and colleges, the integrated SEND team includes specialist teachers and educational psychologists who also may be able to provide some support. Now, thinking now about health. Okay, in terms of help with the health side of things, there are various professionals who may or may not be relevant. In many cases, the GP may be the only health professional who needs to be involved. Depending on your child's age, the health visitor or school nursing team may also be a good source of help. And just an aside there, the school nursing team can offer help with getting ready for school, including toileting, because I know that's quite a big topic sometimes. Now, if your child has difficulties with communication and or swallowing, or participating in daily activities like doing up your shoes or writing, or physical movement like crawling or walking, there are lots of resources on the Children and Young People's Therapies pages of the Bucks Healthcare site, which can offer some help without a referral. So they've got webinars, virtual advice sessions, and website resources. If your child has multiple or more complex needs, you might need more specialist help. So, for example, a 5-year-old who does not speak may be referred to a few specialists, such as an audiologist, speech and language therapist, and ophthalmologist. For some services, a referral may be needed from the GP, but others may be accessed through a school referral or self-referral. For health services, some are age-specific, so who your child or young person might receive support from will depend on their age. For example, for children under 18 with mental health difficulties that are long-term and complex, they may require support from CAMHS. But for young people aged 18 and over with mental health difficulties that are long-term and complex, most will be supported by their GP, and some will be referred by the GP to adult mental health services. If the mental health service considers an appointment is necessary, they will usually offer one within 4 to 6 weeks. Possibly sooner. Thinking specifically about autism spectrum disorder and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. First, in terms of diagnosis, for ASD and or ADHD diagnostic assessments for those under 18, any young person aged 16 to 18 can refer themselves, or a referral can be made by a child's parent or carer or their education provider to the Neurodevelopmental Collaborative, or NDC, pathway for an assessment. And some people choose to seek a private diagnosis for these conditions. Currently, the waiting list for diagnosis is very long, private or not. In terms of support around these diagnoses, there are a range of workshops for parents after their child has received an autism diagnosis, depending on the age of the child. For example, the Early Bird program is for children aged 0 to 5 years. The details of workshops for all ages can be found on the third link on this slide. And there are additional workshops and webinars delivered by CAMHS for parents and carers whose child has an autism or ADHD diagnosis or is on the waiting list for assessment. To access the support, you must be known to the Oxon CAMHS Neurodevelopmental Diagnostic Clinic or Neuropsychiatry Service. That is, you have to be on their waiting list or seeing them for treatment. And finally, on health, some young people with a learning disability will be eligible to be on the Learning Disability Register at their local doctor's surgery and have a free annual health check from the age of 14. They may also be eligible for other services to help meet their needs, for example, extra time during appointments and clear, accessible information. Thinking now about the social side of things, this includes independence and community involvement needs, such as getting dressed or going to an activity or club without support. To find clubs and activities, there is the Bucks Family Information Service. BFIS is for all families, and there's a things to do section. And also there's the local offer, which we'll show you on the next slide. Some examples of clubs and activities that you will find are Tomley, which is on the left-hand side of the slide, which enhances the well-being of disabled people through delivering activities that help develop the skills they need to run their day-to-day lives. There's Thames Valley Adventure Playground, a charity that offers a unique range of adventurous, therapeutic and educational play activities in a safe, caring and stimulating environment. Some venues have SEND-specific sessions, for example, Zoomania in Aylesbury, Halton Tennis Club, and Absolutely Together is a charity that provides free access to activities in the areas they work in. This is the Buckinghamshire local offer. There is a local offer in every local authority in England. It sets out the support available in Bucks for children and young people aged 0 to 25 with SEND. You can use the local offer to find clubs and activities by clicking the Things to Do and Send tile, which you can see in the screenshot on the right-hand side. You can then search the directory for things to do and use the filters down the left-hand side of the page, which you can see here on the left. Now, you can also use the local offer for other information, including about education, which I mentioned previously. Other social help. When it comes to childcare, the Bucks Family Information Service has information on types of childcare providers and a list of local providers. Here are the links to this information, including the brokerage service, which supports parents with finding suitable childcare. And just a note, all childcare providers must give children with special educational needs or disabilities the same opportunities as any other child, and they must not charge more. They must not charge more money to look after children with SEND. And finally, your home may require adaptations because of your child's disability, or they may need certain aids or equipment to help them. You can apply to the council for equipment or help. The first 2 links on this slide give more information about this. Short breaks are sometimes called respite care. Short breaks give children and young people with disabilities time away from their family so they can develop independence, learn new skills, and make friends. They also give parents and carers a break from caring responsibilities. There are 3 types of short breaks available for children and young people with disabilities. There are community groups and activities, also known as universal short breaks, as they are open to everyone, not just children with disabilities. These groups and activities for 0 to 19-year-olds run outside school hours and at weekends. So these are clubs such as Brownies or Cubs and after school or leisure clubs. The second type is targeted short breaks. These are for children and young people with disabilities from 0 to 19 years old who cannot use community groups and activities without support. They run on weekends, evenings and school holidays and include specialist holiday play schemes, specialist sports or activity clubs. And there is also targeted short breaks funded by the council, which can be applied for via the Bucks Activity Project website. You can find details about targeted short breaks on this last link, and there are eligibility criteria for these. And thirdly, there are specialist short breaks. Specialist short breaks are for children and young people with disabilities from 0 to 18 years and their families. These breaks cater for children with multiple complex needs and include both daytime and overnight services, and they're funded by the council. Again, more information can be found via the last link on this slide. Now I'm going to hand you over to Natasha for the second half of this presentation.
Thank you, Jen. So I am going to talk to you about the next section on our flower, which is where can I look for help for my family? So we're going to look at this in 4 sections. So what help you may be able to get as a family in terms of support services and workshops, in terms of financial support, in terms of support at home, and also we're going to talk about understanding the system. So let's start with support services and workshops. So support services and groups can be a really helpful starting point when you want to SEND, as well as looking to join some local support groups. Finding support online can be a good option too. I've included a lot of information on this slide for you, but you can look at that later. Some, but not all of this will be relevant for you. There are some support services and groups that are specific to Buckinghamshire, which we've listed here, such as the Family Support Service and Carers Bucks. On the Carers Bucks website, you will also see Young Carers Charity, and they work with people aged 5 to 16 who live within Buckinghamshire and have a caring role. The Bucks local offer directory also lists local support groups, and you can type in your postcode and search what is closest to you. Buckinghamshire also has some disability specific support groups too, such as GRASPs, SPACE, and North Bucks Down syndrome groups, which we've included the links to on the slide here. There is also a South Bucks Down syndrome group. These are just some examples that we have, but there are many more. There are also charities such as SIBS, who are national, and most charities will have a Facebook page or a Twitter account that you could follow too. There's also lots of closed parent groups on Facebook that you can ask to become a part of. GRASPs is one of them. You may find that as well as obtaining support from services run by professionals, there can also be lots of information, resources, ideas, and help from fellow SEND families online. Workshops and webinars can also be useful sources of information to help you. So we in SENDIAS have quite a few webinars. A good one to start with will be our SEND Support in Schools webinar, which you can find on our web pages. We've included the link here for you at the top of the slide. We also have included at the end of the presentation a list of all the webinars that we have done to date, and also the ones that we have upcoming as well. Contact, they run a workshop for parents. Many of their workshops are tailored to different child age groups, particularly younger children. And they also run a series of general workshops appropriate for parents of children of all ages. Next, we're going to move on to financial support. So there are a range of benefits and financial support that are available for people with SEND and their families. 3 of these are Disability Living Allowance, DLA for short, Personal Independence Payment, known as PIP, and Carers Allowance. So let's talk about DLA first, so Disability Living Allowance. DLA is the main benefit for disabled children. It isn't taxable and it doesn't count as income for other benefits. There are 2 components to DLA. So you have the care component and the mobility component. And depending on their circumstances, your child may qualify for one of these or perhaps for both of them. The care component is based on if your child needs a lot of extra watching over or help with personal care. So there are 3 different rates depending on how much extra care or supervision your child needs and whether this happens during the day or at night time. The 3 rates are low, middle and high, and the amount of money received each week will depend on which rate your child is awarded. The second component of DLA is mobility, and this is for children who need help in getting around. This also, again, has different rates. So we have low and high rate. And again, the amount of money received each week depends on which rate your child is awarded. And you can find more information about DLA by following the links that we have here on the slide. So to apply for DLA, you have to complete a form. The form is a long one and it needs lots of information. It's important to bear in mind that those that are making the decision on your child's claim will have never seen your child before, and they may have little or no knowledge about your child's condition. So it's important to make it really clear and be really detailed in all the extra care and support that your child needs. Some children get a DLA award for an indefinite period of time. But for most children, the DLA award lasts for a fixed period, such as 3 years. This means that you will need to reapply for DLA and complete a form again. So it's therefore quite helpful to keep a copy of the last form that you completed so that you can then refer back to this rather than starting from scratch again. Contact, again, have some really useful tips on completing the DLA form, which we've included the link for here on the slide for you. Now we are going to move on to personal independence payment, so PIP for short. This benefit replaces DLA for when children turn 16, and it goes all the way up to pension age. So it's to help with extra costs of disability. It's not means tested, and it can be paid both in and out of work. Qualifying for PIP depends on the difficulties that the person has in carrying out certain tasks that are essential to independent living and problems that they have in getting around out of doors. Like DLA, PIP is also made up of two components. So you have the daily living component and the mobility component. And depending on their circumstances, they may qualify for one or for both of these components. There are two rates. You have the standard rate and the enhanced rate. And the rate awarded will be dependent on the level of the person's needs. And PIP uses a points-based system to decide whether someone qualifies for the benefit, and if so, at which rate. Again, more information on PIP can be found on Contact's website, which with the links are there for you on the slide. Thirdly, we have carers allowance, and this is the main benefit for carers. So you might get this if you provide a certain amount of care to a child receiving particular disability benefits. Again, it's not means tested, and it does not matter what savings you have. However, if you do work, you can only get carers allowance if your earnings after deductions are no more than a certain amount. And you can see more information on this on Contact's website, which again, the link is there on the slide. And you can also find information about it on the Buckinghamshire Council website, which we have the link for on the next slide, and I'll come to next. So here you will find links to government and Buckinghamshire local authority sources of information on financial support. So the first link you see here includes more information on carers allowance, as we said, but it also includes support information such as the council tax reduction scheme, which means that more of your council tax bill may be paid for you if you are disabled or have someone with a disability living with you. It also includes discounts for families and young people for things such as leisure activities and travel. So the second link here takes you to the gov.uk website, which again has information on financial benefits and grants. And this includes help with transport, so things such as the Blue Badge Disabled Parking Scheme, and helping to buy or lease a car through the Motability Scheme. Many charity organisations also provide information on financial support, and we've listed here of some that we're aware of. So we've spoken a lot about benefits that are available, but there is also financial support which is available through a grant, and a grant is a financial donation or contribution which does not require repayment. So there is a disabled facilities grant which is provided by the government and is for people who are disabled and need to make adaptations to their home. So we've detailed the link on this slide for you. Some charities also provide grants for people who are disabled and their families, and here we have provided links to a couple that we're aware of. You could also look at charities in your local area, in local magazines, and ask at your school for any grants that they might be aware of. So our third section is support at home. And I'm going to talk to you first about carers assessments. So if you are providing regular care for someone, you are entitled to have an assessment of your own needs by the local authority. And you will be entitled to an assessment regardless of the amount or type of care that you support and provide, your financial means or your level of need for support. A carers assessment is to discuss with social services the help that you need with caring, together with help to maintain your own health and balance caring with your life, work and family commitments. It is an opportunity to make sure that your needs are understood and for you to talk about the help that you need. The assessment is free and it's confidential. It's not dependent on whether the person you care for receives any support from social services. If the person you care for does have a social worker or a care manager, then you could ask them to provide an assessment. Then you can contact the Buckinghamshire Council Adult Social Care Team to request one. We have also included here links to the Holiday Activities and Food programme, known as HAF for short, which is run by Buckinghamshire Local Authority and offers free holiday activities in the Easter, summer and Christmas school holidays. And it's for those children who receive free school meals, but that also includes children who have EHC plans. And my colleague Jennifer spoke earlier about short breaks. And short breaks is also gives parents and carers a break from those caring responsibilities. So our last section in this is understanding the system. So navigating the system and processes can sometimes seem a little daunting. And when speaking with your school or other professionals, you may hear lots of phrases or acronyms, and we've put together a jargon buster for you. And in this, we explain what some of the main words and phrases you'll see and hear mean. Some are special educational needs terms, but there are also job roles, organisations and services, and we'll list them in alphabetical order. And this will soon be available on our web pages, which you'll be able to access then. We've also listed here a link to AbilityNet. And this provides advice on making your device easier to use if you have a disability. The guides offer step-by-step instructions on how to adapt your phone, your computer or your tablet to meet your needs. So you can search for a specific need. So for example, if you want to know about making the text larger, or you can filter the guides based on your symptoms. So for example, if you perhaps have a hand tremor, or if you want to filter by condition. So for example, dyslexia. If English is an additional language for you, or you are new to the UK, then you may find the Bell Foundation website really helpful. We've provided the link here for you on the slide. It includes guidance for parents on how to find a school place for their child, as well as key information to help understand the English education system. It's available in 22 of the most commonly used first languages in UK schools. So should parents require a translation of their child's SEND support plan or their EHC plan, then this can be requested to the school or the local authority. Parents can also ask for an interpreter at meetings. So for example, at parents' evening at school, or for their child's annual review meeting as part of their EHC plan. Whoever is hosting the meeting will then be responsible for organising the interpreter. So next we're coming back to our flower, a very colourful flower now. And we're going to talk about what should I do if I think my child might have SEND, but I am not sure. So many parents with a child with special educational needs will tell you that they had an instinct that things were not quite right before a professional suggested it or before any diagnosis. You might see some subtle behaviour that on its own might seem like nothing, but put together might form a pattern. Or your child might do the same things as other children, but do them much more often, with more intensity, and for different reasons. And if you think that things aren't quite right, here are a few suggestions to help you to get a clearer picture. So you can keep a diary about your child, so you can write down things that you notice, such as how they behave in certain situations, or the things that really seem to challenge them. Note down what might have set off a tantrum or a meltdown or a withdrawal, and it's a great way to gather evidence that can be helpful when you start to speak to professionals. If your child is at preschool or at school, then try and find ways to spend time with them while they're there. So you could go on their school trips, or volunteer in class, or at an after-school club that they attend. This way you can see how they are with other children and in an environment that's different to home. You could talk to other people about your child, such as your family and friends, your childminder, health visitor, teacher, or teaching assistants or nursery staff, and ask them how your child behaves when they aren't with you. So once you have more information, if you still think your child may have special educational needs, make an appointment to speak to a professional. And this could be your child's GP or health visitor. It could be staff at the nursery. It could be your child's teacher, or it could be a special educational needs coordinator within their school. Take the information that you've collected about your child and talk about the things that you've noticed or that you're worried about. And remembering the Section 19 principles earlier that Jennifer spoke about, which is from the Children and Families Act. So the local authority and other relevant organisations, such as schools, must have regard to the views and wishes of the child, the young person and their parents. So what does the SEND Code of Practice say that schools should do? Class and subject teachers should make regular assessments of progress for all pupils. These should seek to identify pupils making less than expected progress, given their age and their individual circumstances. So this can include progress in areas other than attainment. For instance, where a pupil needs to make additional progress with wider development or social skills in order to make a successful transition to adult life. And schools must inform parents when they are making special educational provision for a child. And when schools want to call in specialists, they should discuss and agree that with parents too. So we're going to move on to the final section of our lovely colourful flower, which is how do I learn more about my child's needs and what support they need? So assessments are a useful starting point to gauge if your child is making expected progress. You could ask the school to see any assessments carried out in the last 2 years. The slide shows some examples of the types of things that you could ask for example, a phonics screening test, which usually happens in year 1 or in year 2 if it's not been checked in year 1. The slide, as you can see, it shows lots of examples that you could have a look through later on. In some cases, if the school hasn't done any assessments recently, you could ask for them to be carried out. And here we've put together a network diagram of different people and services that may be involved in providing support for your child, and this can be helpful to understand where some professionals sit and within what area. So as we mentioned at the beginning, this is our 6th webinar to date that we've co-produced with FactBucks. And here are our previous ones that you can watch too. So we cover parents communicating confidently, SEND support in schools, EHC needs assessments, capturing your child's views and navigating the health service. We also have some more webinars coming up over the next few weeks. And you can check out our Eventbrite, which the link for is there on the slide, and you can register for joining details. And the recordings of these webinars will be released in due course.
Thank you very much to Jen and Natasha for this presentation. We've had a few questions in the question bar, so I will ask those and Jen and Natasha will hopefully endeavour to answer them. From Stephen, so he says, you refer to the local offer. This is a huge web portal. It is very difficult to find what is relevant. I used it once and found a relevant page and a phone number where I could call for help. I called it and they said they can't help. Do you have any advice for Stephen at all?
It can be quite tricky to navigate to what you need to on the local offer. We are here to help with that as well. So, excuse me, if you, I mean, a good place to start is our web pages because we might have the information you need. But if you're having difficulty searching the directory, for instance, on the local offer, we may be able to help with that. I'm just thinking, is the web chat the best way to go, or a web contact form? Mm-hmm. If you have a specific query, if you can fill out our web contact form, we can probably just sort of give you the right words to search for on the local offer.
Thank you. And we have another question about HAF. So this is looking at that HAF site. It seems to only be for kids on free school meals. So the presentation is a little bit misleading. Do you have any advice or information about other sort of options that are similar to HAF or anything they could look into?
Yeah, so it is for school-aged children who receive benefits related free school meals, but it does include children who are eligible for these but are educated at home. The government website yeah, so if your child does have an EHC plan as well, then you would also be qualifying for HAF. If your child does not have an EHC plan or does not have free school meals, then there are other sort of activities and clubs and programs that you can have a look for. Those I would suggest is probably best to look through either the Family Information Service website that we mentioned earlier, or through the local offer using the filters down the left-hand side to filter down to the things to do, and then you can search by your postcode and see what's local to you.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a question. So my daughter is 18 and I want some advice regarding A-level exams and exam provision and exam clashes. I want some advice on options before I speak to her. Who can I talk to?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
So this parent says their daughter is 18 and they're looking for some advice about A-level exams, exam provision and exam clashes. They're wanting some advice with regards to options before they speak to her. Who is the best person to talk to or the best team to talk to?
If you, so we're getting well beyond the basics of Nutri-Send. If you're looking for understanding that support may be available in terms of taking exams, so there can be certain the word I'm looking for, access arrangements that may be that your child may be eligible for, depending on what happens in school at the moment. So things like if you think your child needs well, the school considers that your child needs extra time, and they would normally give your child extra time for doing work assessments at school, for instance, or if they need a scribe, so someone to do the writing for them, or they might need to have a laptop or movement breaks, and so on. So those are things that can be put in place, but that's getting a bit
yeah, I would suggest that if you would like more information on that, if you pop onto our website and fill out the contact form, and then we'll be able to send you some further information on that.
Okay, thank you. We have another question. Can you explain what the portage service is, please?
So portage is I think it's described as an educational service. It's for 0 to 3-year-olds, and what if you're eligible for it, I think it requires a referral. They will come to your home, and it's sort of play-based education, if you like, to help a child to learn to engage with others and interact. There is if you look on I'd have to check which website it is, whether it's the local offer or the Family Information Service. If you search up portage try both of those, there'll be a link to further information about portage. So it's PORTAGE.
Okay, thank you very much. I've got another question here. You mentioned about what the school can provide within their existing provision and staff, but how does it work if InPoint relates to SALT and the NHS Council Therapy Visit is only virtual? who has the obligation to provide the interventions for a young child in infancy?
The schools in Buckinghamshire have access to speech and language therapy sort of assessment materials via something called Infant Link, Language Link and Speech Link, depending on the age of your child. So schools are expected to provide, they can, it's an online thing, so they can do initial work with the child, so assess where they are, and also what that program will do, this online resource will do, is give suggestions for what kinds of intervention that will help that child will need, and whether they think a actual therapist needs to be involved, so whether a referral needs to be made. So that would be the starting point with a school. They would look at that, they would use the resources that they have access to.
Okay, thank you very much. Just having a look through the questions again. So we have a question. How long is the current long waiting time for ASD assessments?
Sure. It's about, I believe, a couple of years. But as we said earlier, that diagnosis is not required to have support. So needs can still be identified, without having a diagnosis, and support can still be put in place without that. But it can be quite a long waiting time, and that's for both, as I understand, both private and NHS.
Thank you very much. Let's see if we have any more questions.
Can I just
yeah.
Sorry, can I just come back to one of the previous questions where somebody was having difficulty getting hold of getting the information that they wanted through the Family Information Service. We'll and the local offer, we'll see whether we can raise this higher up within the county, because it should be, information should be accessible not just online but via phone as well. So just pick up on that point. Yeah. Thanks. Did you have another one, Sasha?
We don't seem to have any more questions through, so if someone does want to send one more question, we do have time for one more if somebody does want to send one through. So happy to wait for 1 minute and see if we do have one more question come through.
While we're waiting for that, can I just say that FatBucks' role as the Parent Carer Forum is to raise those sorts of questions. So I shall take that one up about the contact number, because that should work. And I'll also let you know that we're working very hard to improve that waiting time provision for ASD and ADHD assessments. It's not acceptable. The council and the local health authority know it's not acceptable. And there's a piece of work ongoing now to work out how that assessment timescale can be reduced, but also what support can be put in place for families who may be waiting for those. So that just to let you know that there is work going on in the background to address what is an unacceptable situation.
Thank you, Andrew. We do have time for one more question, but I can't see any more questions coming through, so we're happy to wait for 1 more minute.
Yeah, I appreciate there's an awful lot of information in this presentation, and I think if you're new to the world of SEND, it's too much to take in all in one go. So really use this, come back to it, dip into it as you need to for the things that you need at the time. As I said earlier, if you treat it as a reference document, a reference point, but also, of course, you can come back to us, SENDIAS service. That's what we're here for. We're here to help. If you didn't, you've got different questions, or if something wasn't clear, then by all means come back to us. If there are no more questions, Sasha, should we just move on to, which is the one more slide?
Yes, we can move on to the next slide.
So in terms of, as I said, if you've got if you need more information or clarification, good place to start is our web pages. We've got stuff on there, service video, which we mentioned earlier. But the main point of the main way to contact us, the best way, is the contact form. And in that you can tell us what your query is, and we will respond to it appropriately. As well as asking for specific information via the contact form. We also have email news updates where we send out like an email newsletter of things that may be of interest to families who've got children with SEND. So you can use the contact form to sign up for those email updates as well. If you want a quick response to a general query, you could try our web chat service. So there's a link on our web pages to the web chat. At the moment, we've got 2 time slots a week, on a Monday afternoon and a Friday morning during term time. Alternatively, we also have a mailbox and voicemail service. We aim to provide at least an initial response within 10 days. And while we're open year round, we do have more limited availability during the school holidays. And just finally, a reminder about FactBucks. Andrew would like to be pleased to see that we've got your Twitter account up there and stuff. You can find the links to all of our webinars on their website. And yeah, it's worth joining the forum to make sure that your views are heard at a county level. So thank you very much for joining us today. I hope we hope you found it useful.
Yeah,